Here's something that will bend your mind. Scientists can now predict what decision you'll make before you're even consciously aware of making it. Our sense of being in control might be one of the biggest illusions we experience.
That's fascinating and honestly a bit unsettling. How did researchers even figure that out?
Well, they used brain imaging to detect activity patterns that predicted simple choices, like which button someone would press, several seconds before the person felt they had made the decision. And that's just scratching the surface of how mysterious consciousness really is.
You know what's really wild about this? It challenges everything we think we know about free will and decision making.
Exactly right. And researchers like Daniel Wegner have taken this even further. They've actually found ways to trick people into feeling they consciously caused actions that were really controlled by someone else. It's like a magic trick being played by our own brains.
So, wait, are you saying our consciousness is just along for the ride, watching a movie of decisions that have already been made?
That's increasingly what the evidence suggests. Think about it this way: when you're playing tennis and hit the ball, you feel like you're experiencing everything in real time. But actually, the visual, sound, and touch information all travel at different speeds to your brain.
Hmm. So, how does our brain handle those different timing signals?
Well, it essentially creates a delayed, edited version of reality. Your brain collects all the sensory information and synchronizes it before presenting it to your consciousness. We're literally living a few milliseconds in the past all the time.
That reminds me of how movies work. Individual frames getting edited together to create the illusion of continuous motion.
And here's where it gets even stranger. This editing process extends to our very sense of self. You know how we feel like we're this consistent self experiencing everything? That might be another illusion created by our brains.
Well, that's exactly what meditation practitioners have been saying for thousands of years, isn't it?
Right. And now neuroscience is backing this up. When people meditate deeply or take certain psychedelics, an area of the brain called the default mode network becomes less active. That's the network scientists believe helps create our sense of self.
So, our sense of being a unified self can actually disappear while consciousness remains? That's mind blowing.
And if you think that's wild, let me tell you about split brain patients. These are people who've had the connection between their brain hemispheres surgically cut. Sometimes one hand will try to button up their shirt, while the other hand simultaneously tries to unbutton it.
Like having two separate conscious entities in one brain?
Exactly. And each side can have completely different opinions and desires, totally unaware of what the other side is thinking or feeling. It's more like two conjoined twins than a single person.
That makes me wonder about how much of our behavior and personality is really us versus outside influences we're not aware of.
Well, speaking of outside influences, let me tell you about this parasite called Toxoplasma gondii. It can only reproduce in cat intestines, but it often infects rats first. And here's the incredible part: it actually changes the rats' behavior to make them attracted to cats instead of afraid of them.
Oh, that's absolutely terrifying. Please tell me this doesn't affect humans.
Well, actually, it does. About one third of humans are infected with toxoplasma, and it can cause behavioral changes in us too. It creates cysts in the brain that increase dopamine levels and has been linked to various mental health conditions.
So, between delayed consciousness, split brains, and mind controlling parasites, what does this mean for our understanding of free will?
That's the big question. When you look at all the evidence together, the delay in conscious awareness, the ability to manipulate our sense of will, the impact of parasites and brain chemistry, it becomes really hard to maintain the idea that our conscious self is in control.
You know what's fascinating about this? It actually aligns with what many Eastern philosophical traditions have been saying for millennia.
Absolutely right. And this brings us to one of the most intriguing possibilities: panpsychism. What if consciousness isn't something that emerged at some point in evolution, but rather a fundamental property of matter itself?
That sounds like it's veering into some pretty far out territory.
But here's the thing: it's being seriously considered by philosophers and scientists as a potential solution to what's called the hard problem of consciousness. How does any physical system give rise to subjective experience?
So, you're saying consciousness might be woven into the fabric of the universe itself?
Well, think about it. If we can't point to anything that definitively distinguishes which collections of atoms are conscious and which aren't, maybe we shouldn't be drawing that line at all. Maybe consciousness is a basic feature of reality, like mass or charge.
That's a pretty radical shift in how we think about consciousness and our place in the universe.
And that's really the key insight from all of this research. Consciousness is far more mysterious and complex than we typically assume. Whether it's the illusion of free will, the constructed nature of self, or the possibility that consciousness is fundamental to reality, we're just beginning to scratch the surface.
Looking ahead, what do you think this means for how we understand ourselves and our decisions?
Well, I think it calls for a kind of intellectual humility. We need to recognize that our conscious experience, while incredibly rich and meaningful, might not be exactly what it appears to be. And that recognition might actually lead to more compassion and understanding in how we treat ourselves and others.
That's quite a journey from brain science to ethical implications.
Indeed, and perhaps that's the most fascinating part of studying consciousness. It's not just an academic exercise, it touches everything from our most personal sense of self to our deepest questions about the nature of reality